Welcome to Sports Leadership Topic 1, Lecture 2, Part 3. This is where we continue looking at the seduction of leadership, and this time we're going to have a quick look at followership. Very important thing to get our heads around. Followership is where we actually shift the focus in the roles between the leader and the follower. So instead of entirely focusing on what the leader does, we have a think about what the follower does. Remember that this is an influence relationship. Followers share many of the same qualities with leaders, and we'll look later on in the course at what those qualities are, and probably by then you'll have quite an understanding of why they're important. Two of the key things though are firstly critical thinking, that people who make good leaders as followers also have to be able to think critically, so being able to think on their own and being mindful of the effects that their thoughts and actions have on other people's behaviour and on how that contributes to how the organisation functions. And uncritical thinking, there's a continuum between critical and uncritical thinking, where with an uncritical thinker you fail to think about your own impact on the organisation and on those around you. And those two things are particularly important in ensuring that you are a good follower and that you then become a good leader. We will go into this in a lot more depth later on. Equally, there's a leadership continuum where the leader uses their authority. We have leader-centred leadership. So everything is about the leader, not about the follower. Right down to follower-centred leadership, which is rather different, where there are areas of freedom for followers to be able to do things as much as there are leadership centred discussions and decisions to be made. Now this particular model is from Tannenbaum and Schmidt, and it starts where leaders make decisions and they announce them, so it's quite autocratic, through to the leader selling a decision to a group of followers, to the leader presents ideas and invites questions, so it's getting more interactive, into about middle stage where the leader presents a decision which is subject to change by what the followers put in, to the leader presents problems, gets suggestions and makes changes, so there's still quite a bit of leader involvement, through to the leader defines limits and asks the group to make decisions, where we're getting to an almost shared leadership model, through to a shared leadership model where the leader permits followers to function within defined limits. Now, if you're working down at that end of the spectrum, you end up with a lot of ability and flexibility to deal with change, and that's an essential part of leading in our current environment. So having a think about this, what's unique about sports leadership? Well, there's quite a bit actually. For a start, sports leadership tends to be more cohesive, or the groups tend to be more cohesive, or need to be more cohesive because of the emotional engagement that people have. There are far more complex interpersonal dynamics when you're dealing with a whole load of prima donnas together, and regardless of whether you are a sports person or whether you're in sports administration, there will be people who are equally passionate about sports and equally certain that they have the one best way as you. Poor communication in sports has more far-reaching effects than it does in business. There are usually fewer systems and things change a lot more quickly. You need more adaptive leadership styles and more perception in order to know what the appropriate approach is to working through critical situations in a sports environment. It's also much more highly stressed, so you need better stress tolerance. You have to have the ability to rebound well from adversity, so it's quite a competitive environment, and you have to be constantly looking for a new edge, otherwise you're going to start losing. So those things add an awful lot of pressure that aren't quite so strong in business. Also in sports there is a lot of use of psychology, and that is lacking from business. I think business can learn a lot more by the use of psychology from sport. And overall, I think good leadership in sport is more critical than good leadership in business. You can get by on management in business, but not in sport.